Welcome to Money Mystery powered by OmniBSIC Bank. My name is Bernard Avile, hosting this special edition of this podcast because we have a very important man to talk to. He's the MD of OmniBSIC Ghana in the person of, I like to call him Pastor Daniel Asiedu, but he'll be known as Mr. Daniel Asiedu. Great to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Bernard, and a very good afternoon to you. Thanks for having you here as well.
We are very privileged to have you on the podcast because you are more of a doer than a talker. And so I'm sure the team having to convince you to do this was a whole journey. So thank you so much. Did they do it? Did they struggle to get you to say yes to do this podcast?
you don't struggle to get me to do things, because for us to make the impact, I have to be involved. And so it's something I've been looking forward to. And I've been looking forward to that. I'm excited I'm here.
Wonderful. So a lot of people don't know that you started out studying engineering. So you probably would have been the head of Mechanical Lloyd or running some big car company.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your engineering education and let's segue into how you ended up in banking.
Thank you very much. So, like you said, I have a first degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Ibadan in Nigeria. And that's because I spent some part of my life in Nigeria. And when I left university, one of the best in my class, then, as a young man, I wanted an employment. And I got 3 employment. And incidentally, so this was Pricewaterhouse. And then I had Unilever then in Nigeria. And then I had Nigerian Breweries, which is the biggest brewery in Nigeria. For Unilever and Nigerian Breweries, I was going there as a training engineer. But for Pricewaterhouse, I was going there as a trainee accountant auditor. And the package from Pricewaterhouse then was like twice what Unilever and what do you call it, Nigerian Breweries was offering me. And so at that age, it's all about how much you can recruit. Yes. So I decided to go into it. And incidentally, I had seen people who had gone into the accounting profession, engineers who had gone in there. They were doing very well in the banking sector. So I was like, if they can do it, why not? Let me give it a shot. And the rest is history.
What was your first few years at PwC like? What were you doing there?
So I was employed as a trainee auditor, but eventually you write the professional exams to become an accountant. So I was doing auditing, mainly. And so for a number of years, I was an auditor. And so
were you based in Ibadan or you were traveling across the country?
So I was based in Nigeria, but traveling all over the country, and I've done many of the jobs that you can think of in Nigeria as a young man, doing auditing.
So in hindsight, the idea to go to PwC has paid off because now we see the value of that in your work. But at the time, you didn't know you end up in banking.
I didn't know that I would end up in banking, but I can tell you that at least looking back, I don't regret at all. I think it's made me better. It's made me appreciate issues much better. It's to the glory of God. It's enhanced my profile and it's made me who I am today. I don't regret at all.
What kind of training does a young graduate get in the Big Four? I ask this because we see a lot of them do well in many fields. Even our current revenue authority boss is a PwC country.
KPMG.
Actually, a KPMG. So the question is, what kind of training does a person get in any of the Big Four that makes it so unique and so rigorous?
Okay, so I can only talk from the Pricewaterhouse perspective because that is where I spent my early years working. But what I can tell you is that it gives you a broader perspective of activities and businesses and organizations. So you're able to understand things from the beginning to the end. So because if you're auditing, you audit almost every department. You get to understand what is going on there. You got to appreciate why businesses must do well. You got to also appreciate the fact that when businesses are not doing well, there are issues that should be tackled and things like that. And at an early age, you're able to appreciate why certain businesses don't do well. And it also changes your attitude and your understanding of life because you know that if I do ABCD right, the likelihood for me to succeed is there. And so it gives you overall a broader perspective of life and it prepares you for the world.
But what is it about an engineering education that helps a lot of them do well in management? Because not just PwC, Unilever, a lot of breweries, we've seen a lot of engineers transition into leadership and do very well. What is it about engineering?
Okay, so I think I've been asked this question a number of times, and I can tell you just one factor. The average engineer has an analytical mind. And so we've been taught to question a lot of things. We've been taught to appreciate things, not just take it from the surface value, but appreciate it. Because don't forget, in engineering, everything is about laws and the fact that things must obey certain laws, and about the fact that if you apply certain formula, you must get an end result. So when an engineer is looking at things, he's not just looking at this from just the surface, but why is it this way? Can it be better in another way? Why are we not getting the results? So it gives an analytical mind and you appreciate things better. So I think that is the advantage we have. And I can tell you that most engineers who become accountants are always much better because of the way we look at things.
Somebody said one of the advantages China has over the rest of the world is that in their national leadership, they have lots of engineers. Okay. I think Engineer Kenashibe sent me some note on this, that per capita, they have more engineers in national leadership than other countries. Do you think we need more engineers in various fields of our national endeavor?
Well, not necessarily engineers, but I think we need people who appreciate things, or who appreciate things better. I don't think engineers alone can do the things that we need to be done for this country to move forward. But I think that we must all have a different perspective about how to move this country forward, about how to do things right, about how to get things right. And even beside finishing from the university, you must, when you start your working life or your working career, you must develop yourself. And so if you look at my profile, you see that I've gone to some of the best business schools in the world, and I always tell my people that. And I send them as well. Some have been to Harvard, some have been to Chicago, University of Chicago Bush School of Business, some have been to London School of Economics, London Business School, and the likes. And the whole idea is that we must learn to appreciate things from a different perspective. So, you see, so capacity building is very key in order for us to move this country forward. So people must necessarily develop themselves. So I don't think necessarily it has to be engineers, but I think if we all bring something to the table, we can move this country forward.
This is the Money Mystery Podcast, and we're talking to the MD of OmniBSIC. Of course, the podcast is powered by OmniBSIC Bank Ghana, Daniel Asiedu. So you started at PwC. Just walk us through your career journey in the first few years. After that, where did you go?
Okay. So I spent about 7 years in PwC, became a qualified accountant in 1998. And then in the year 2000, I joined Zenith Bank in Nigeria. And then I spent about 3 years there. And then I relocated back to Ghana. I came back to Ghana in 2003. Then VRA, I spent just about 1 year in VRA. And then Standard Trust then was coming to Ghana, and they had heard about me. So they contacted me. I became their financial controller. So we set up Standard Trust Bank in those days. And then 6 months into Standard Trust, Zenith also got a license. And Zenith came to Ghana. And then I remember the founder, Jimovia, calling me to say, Dan, you don't have a choice than to move over to work with me. We have worked before. And so I became the chief operating officer of Zenith. 4 years down the line, I became the managing director. Spent 4 years and then another 7 years as a managing director. And I left, went to ADB. And then today I'm here.
So your coming to Ghana, you can say, was divine providence.
Sort of. Sort of.
Interesting. Because now you've worked in just a few months at VRA, which is really the only Indian organization.
Yes.
And the banks won't let you rest at all.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your early working years in the Nigerian banking sector. So after you became a chartered accountant in 1998, you did Zenith Bank for a few years.
Yes.
What was banking like in Nigeria in the late 90s and early 2000s?
Okay. So I think it's an interesting question. In the early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, banking in Nigeria was not very different from how we used to see banking in Ghana until the likes of Zenith came into the space. And then, of course, they decided that, look, banking can be more interesting than it is today. And there was that major transformation in the industry. I remember when the likes of Zenith, GTB, UB, and Access and Co started. We had other bigger banks, much bigger, banks that had been in Nigeria for so many years. But these banks started, and within a very short period, they had become the formidable force in the banking industry in Nigeria, all because of the way they entered the market and how they decided to use service as a means of ensuring that they were customers. And so that transformed the Nigerian banking space. So by the 2000s, I mean, that space has been transformed completely, you know. And for me, I think that it also gave us an understanding that every market can be transformed if you have people who are willing to make a difference. Thank you.
So was there a policy shift that forced the Nigerian banks to start looking outward? Because I think it was around 2003, 2004 that we started seeing their entry into the Ghana market. Just give us the back end of that
Okay.
whole move.
Okay. I would say that perhaps at a point they had outgrown the Nigerian market, or some of them started outgrowing the Nigerian market, and they were looking into other markets. And naturally, if you're in Nigeria and you're looking to other markets, the Ghanaian market becomes a market that should be of interest to you. So I believe that is another reason why they looked into our market, because really they had done very well in the Nigerian market. They had done, they had redefined the banking space. They had done many new things. The question is, what next? And of course, incidentally, at the time, our market was not that vibrant, so perhaps they felt that they could come here and make a difference. And I believe that's why they came.
When we come back, we'll talk about the first few years of his foray into Ghana and also how the Ghanaian banking scene was changed by the entry of these banks. But his own leadership journey as well. Don't forget, starting off at PwC, doing a brief stint at Zenith before coming to Ghana VRA, and now being taken as a financial controller of a big bank, and eventually the CEO of one of the banks that had set up in Ghana. All of that and more when we come back. This is the Money Mystery Podcast powered by OmniBSIC. Stay with us.
In 2019, OmniBSIC Bank came into being. For years, you have banked with us, and we have been at your service, prioritizing your financial journey, building the strong foundation to meet your financial needs. And now we have evolved with a new tagline, not just another bank, with a resolve to be the bank of choice through continuous innovation and exceptional customer experience.
Not just another bank.
Welcome back. This is the Money Mystery Podcast powered by OmniBSIC Bank, not just another bank. My name is Bernard Avle. I'm here with Daniel Asiedu, who's the MD of OmniBSIC Ghana. We're trying to understand his leadership journey, but also his leadership philosophy. So from the things you've said about your trajectory, even with PwC, there's leadership there. And then, of course, being financial controller of Standard Trust is a big one. Have you always considered yourself a leader? Or it was when you were given the position of maybe the MD of Zenith Ghana that you began to see yourself as a leader?
Okay, thank you very much, Bernard. I think I've always considered myself as a leader. And I think that we must all appreciate the fact that we're all leaders. You see, you don't have to lead an organization before you become a leader. In every way, in every place you find yourself, consider yourself as a leader. And so I think it's one of the things that has helped me to always see myself as a leader, wanting to make an impact.
How important is leadership to any entity in your view?
So, the importance of leadership is like saying that, look, without a leader, the organization is not going anywhere, the entity is not going anywhere, because the leader provides the direction. The leader tells the followers where we must be going, and it is the responsibility of the leader to make sure that people are aligned so that ultimately we get to wherever we are going to. So I think leadership is very key. And if you look at our lives, the reason why most things are failing, and I say things, not necessarily organization, because there are failures everywhere. Failures in marriages, failures in government, failures in organizations, failures in schools, everywhere. And that's because people who are supposed to play the leadership role are not seen as leaders. They don't provide the right direction. And so sometimes the people are following are confused. And I think that we must all appreciate the fact that leadership is everything.
So for you, you say things, so which means that family leadership, company leadership, community leadership, corporate leadership, those are all important dimensions.
Very important.
Do you approach all of them the same way?
Interesting question. Not necessarily. Let me even be bold and say no. So let me tell you the three dimensions of leadership that I find myself. So the church, like you said, so I'm the chairman of the International Presbytery of Fountain Gate Chapel. I'm like the general overseer of Fountain Gate Chapel, Reverend Susanebas Church. I'm also the leader in my family, in my home, and then I'm also the leader in the organization, and the approach is not the same. So if you look at OmniBSIC Bank, where I'm the managing director, there are rules and regulations that guide our activities here, and as a leader, you want to ensure that people abide by those rules and regulations. It's that simple. If you go to the church, and of course here in the office, we're all paid for it. Okay, directly. So you see the benefit. But if you go to the church, most people are not paid for what they do. And so there's some of the rules and the regulations that you have here may not apply. But the beauty is that we also have a manual that guides us, and that's the Bible. Okay. God expects how we should do things. So that makes it easier. So it is our responsibility as the leaders of the church to guide people to make sure that they align. And as we come to the home, of course, we all exchange vows, and there are things we said we'll do and the things we said we'll not do. And if your family is built on the Christian values, of course, there's also the Bible to guide you. But when it comes to emotions, they are not the same. Treating a woman and the children is different from how I treat the staff in the bank. It's different from how I even treat the people in church. And so you need to wear different hats or different caps based on where you find yourself as a leader.
Which of them would you say is the toughest?
You have asked a very... I think they are tough. But perhaps when it comes to the church setting, it's a bit tougher because sometimes, because the benefits are not direct, people don't appreciate the fact that ultimately God will bless us if we align. And so it's difficult to let them know that, look, continue to do what you have to do, especially when people are believing God for certain things, when people are trusting God for certain things, it's not coming. I keep telling them God is faithful and things like that as a leader. In the office, if people don't align, you know what to do. You can ask people to leave. At home, when they don't align, you can deprive them of certain things. But in the house of God, it doesn't work like that, you see. So I guess from that perspective, I would say it's a bit more complicated when it comes to the things of God, or when you have to lead the people of God. But
and because you are not paying them.
Exactly.
And yet you can't sack them too.
You can't sack them.
Because they are part of the body of Christ.
Yes.
Interesting. But in Zenith, just briefly, that was your first full leadership in the sense that you were now the country MD. That's different from being the financial control of a bank, right? The ultimate responsibility falls with you. So how did you approach it? What was your leadership philosophy even then?
Okay. So I became the managing director of Zenith at about 40, 41. I was very young, and I was one of the youngest to have become managing director at the time. And I must say that the previous managing director that took over from Mr. Asiedu, actually, he built me, so he prepared me to a great extent. However, my style was very different from his style. And I remember when I took over, the first thing I did was to, gather my managers at African Regency Hotel. And I said, tell them what are the issues, what are the problems with me. And my people wrote.
A lot.
Yeah, because I wanted the feedback. Because I'm a strict disciplinarian. I believe in, enforcing the rules strictly. And when the managing director, the former managing director was there, so and he was a very nice man, very calm, contrary to what we think as Nigerians, he wasn't that at all. And so you will discover that each time I was a bit hard on staff, they would go to him and then he would calm them down. And sometimes he'd come and talk to me. So people were like, that Asiedu is taking over. So what's going to happen to us? So I needed that feedback. And so I gathered them and they wrote. And so I remember telling the HR manager then, Richardo, that look, I will look at all of them and I'll work with all of them. And I at least I tried to learn from what they were saying, and it helped me. And over time, I became a better person, listening to, reading the things that they wanted me to change. Of course, some I didn't believe in, so I didn't bother about it. But eventually, it made me a very better person. And in terms of my leadership style, and by the way, when I was leaving Zenith, more than half of the staff were weeping because they wanted me to stay. So it meant that I had to make impact on them strongly at a time. And that's because my leadership style is very simple. I believe I'm a transformational leader. Wherever I am, I believe that I want to motivate the people, influence them. I want to get them to give up their best so that ultimately we achieve the vision and set record for ourselves and be happy. And I mean, if you watch the time I was in Zenith, I mean, you will discover there was a time that the bank experienced phenomenal growth. I mean, what they are doing now is to build on what I did at the time. And I give all glory to God for that, which happened. And everywhere I found myself, I mean, ADB the same. When I went to ADB, this is a bank that they never believed that they could do many things. But I told them, you have the capacity. The only difference is that you're a government bank. These guys are private banks, but we are all bankers. And to the glory of God, I was able to influence them. And then we changed the bottom line, made significant impact. The story of OmniBSIC Bank is not the same. I mean, I don't want to talk much about it, but I mean, the records are
We'll
there.
come to OmniBSIC shortly, but I noticed a few different contexts. So leading in a private versus a public is one. Also leading in Nigeria versus Ghana is different. Can you talk a bit about those transitions? Did you have to adjust anything to be able to survive in your new context?
Okay. So the typical Ghanaian institution want you to take your time a little bit. The typical Nigerian institution will say, look, we want it now. I won't say one is right or one is wrong. It's a matter of style.
Okay.
But I think that applying the Nigerian mentality got me more result
In Ghana.
in Ghana. And so wherever I find myself, I want to apply that to get the result quickly. When you talk about private against government, naturally, you know, private, you have so much influence by the shareholders and things like that. But then it's all about the bottom line, the result. And so they really don't want to interfere. You get the right people, the right hands to help you. Mm-hmm. Government will, I mean, they also want the result, but not as much as private. But sometimes governmental influence doesn't help. And so you discover that you have to balance between, you know, the political interests and the bottom line. But I always told staff, when I found myself in government establishment, that you are an institution, a profit-making institution first before you are a government. Mm-hmm. And if this institution doesn't do well, it will not help all of us. And that has really helped me wherever I went. And so that's why I was able to influence them, because there are some of these institutions that people have entrenched position politically. And whilst you are pushing them for that agenda, they think, look, you are here for a short period and don't disturb our lives. And sometimes can be difficult. But, you know, we give glory to God that we've made impact.
How important is establishing organizational culture as a leader? Because clearly you have your own leadership principle. Yet when you move into a new organization, there's a way they do things. Do you deliberately try to impose a new culture? How do you go about that?
Very important. I believe that every leader must appreciate the fact that if you have to make impact, then there's a certain culture you need to bring to bear. For me, my culture is very simple. It's a culture of performance, high performance. So if you're not performing, you can't survive around me. And the organizations I've run, you know, some of the organizations, especially the government organizations, didn't even believe. We have what we call a monthly performance review. And tomorrow is Saturday. The whole of tomorrow, we'll gather in a hotel in this bank, reviewing individual performance, branches and all that, telling us you have to justify your inclusion. Wow. So we do that consistently every month. You know, and for some of the government organizations, when I introduced the same thing, I told them, look, you have to justify your inclusion. You know, so that this culture of performance that I have introduced has helped me. I can't survive in an environment where people don't account for what they do. I can't. Then why am I there? You have to bring something to the table. I remember when I may mention that one of the institutions, when I got there, the resumption time used to be about 8:30. And I used to tell them, so if you resume at 8:30, when will you be ready to serve the customers? So it means that by the time you're ready to serve customers, it's around 9. So Bernard, if you needed money around 8 and you're hot, it means that you won't get it, you have to wait. And I said, some banks are opening at 7:30. They fought it, but eventually we all started resuming at 7:30. And some told me, wow, this is doable, it's simple, it is easy. I said, it's very easy. I mean, if you just sacrifice a little bit, you get the result and you'll be happy.
On that note, we'll take a short break. This is the Money Mystery Podcast powered by OmniBSIC Bank. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is the Money Mystery Podcast brought to you by OmniBSIC Bank. My name is Bernard Avle. We're very happy to have our guest for today, Daniel Asiedu, who is the MD of the bank. He's also a pastor, a man of God. I was introducing a man who used to run SEC recently. At the time, the Minister of Finance was there, and I said, if you want somebody to manage your money, get a man of God. And they all laughed. So, but has that helped you in these jobs? Because money is a very sensitive issue. And in accepting to do this one as OmniBSIC, did your man of Godness convince them to come for you?
So I wouldn't know why they came for me, and of course that is up to the shareholders. But I want to believe that it played a factor, coupled with the experience I have gathered, and it's important because although these days people find it difficult to believe men of God and things like that, but there are still some genuine ones, and we are not perfect. I mean, nobody's saying we are perfect, but at least. We are mindful of who we are, and we are mindful of what guides us, and we are mindful of the reputation we must bring to bear.
No, I mean, I'll say to you that in my personal life, people who talk to me about banking, they like to know who leads the bank. Because when somebody wants to put his money somewhere, the integrity of the people in the bank is as important as the offering. So I don't know whether that resonates with you, but for me, it's very important point.
Very important. Banking, I mean, the day you lose your integrity as a banker, you are not fit to be a banker. I mean, there's a banker's creed, So it's important that you comport yourself well, and that's why I tell people all the time that I'd rather protect my integrity and lose everything I have than to lose everything I have and have money. My integrity is all I have in life, and I protect it jealously.
Why did you accept this new position? Because you had done banking for a while, you could have done anything. So I suspect they had to sell the project to you for you to say, I like this. So talk to me about taking over as MD of OmniBSIC.
Okay, so I'll cut it short. I was on the board, and at a point the board felt that, look, we needed somebody to take over. And one of the shareholders who made me represent him spoke to me extensively. But beyond them speaking to me, I saw it as an opportunity to pick one of our own institutions and make it the pride of the country. And that's because at the time I got here, it was almost a dead bank. But today, to the glory of God, we are where we are, because if we have done it with a foreign bank, if we have done it with a bank with a foreign majority shareholding, if I have done it with a government bank and did it well, then what stops us from doing it with a privately owned Ghanaian bank? So it was an opportunity for me to make a statement that, look, we can pick our own thing. And I can tell you that there are many things we are doing, and there's something called Project 6.0 that we're about to launch. And the 6.0 is supposed to position us well to move into other territories outside this country. And I want to believe God that very soon, OmniBSIC Bank will be the first Ghanaian bank to have subsidiaries within Africa and beyond.
So at what point in the whole merger did you join OmniBSIC?
Okay. So before the merger, I was close to the shareholders of OmniBank.
Okay.
And of course, I did a few things before the merger, and then during the merger, I was like a consultant to the two banks. And so I think 6 months into the merger, I left. But I didn't leave for too long. And so eventually I joined the bank in 2020. And so it means I've been here for about 5 years. And so to answer your question directly, I joined just after the merger.
So was this before COVID or after COVID?
I think this was just right after COVID.
Amazing. That must have been an interesting time to lead an organization which had different cultures, because Sahel is Libyan, OmniBank is Ghanaian, started as Omni Savings and Loans.
Union Savings
and Loans. And you are bringing all of that in the post-COVID era. How did you manage all of those things?
Okay, so, thanks. Very simple. I mean, all the cultures are, I mean, that's the various banks, all the two banks brought together, we had to just kill them. And introduce a new culture altogether.
Okay.
Altogether, because, I mean, it's you agree with me that when you're taking over a bank like that, I mean, you can't, And one of the things that helped me was the fact that I wasn't from any of the two institutions. So bringing a new culture was easy.
You're neutral.
I was neutral. And so everything I introduced was seen as something that would help the bank. And I can tell you that if I come from any, it would have been difficult.
Which means that there were people from both sides who were in staff. So some from Sahel, some from Union.
So the merger, part of the condition of the merger is no job will be lost. So we brought all the people from Sahel and all the people from Omni. Yes, no jobs was going to be lost. And so we just have to find a way of making sure that everybody was utilized fully.
How different is a bank from other financial institutions?
So as a bank, the risk level is high, regulation is high, people scrutinize things more, the general public is interested. And so it means that whatever we do, we have to have it at the back of our mind that it's not just us, but there are many stakeholders. For other financial institutions, depending on what it is, the interest may not be that much because, I mean, if you take, say, savings and loans, maybe just few people are interested in all that because they're not as big as a bank. And one bank failure can have a ripple effect. And so the risk level in banks is very high. And that's why regulation is high in the industry. So to answer your question directly, the difference is that the risk level is high and this has to be done properly.
What target did you set for yourself when you took over this relatively small bank in a crowded Ghanaian banking sector?
Okay. So I've always believed that every bank in the country can do well. And so when I took over, the bank was making losses, huge losses. But I told myself within the shortest possible time, I think at the time, I told myself, I remember telling the board that within 2 years, we have to be profitable. And to the glory of God, within 2 years, we became profitable. And I said, look, within 5 years, we have to move from a tier 4 to about tier 2, tier 3.
Wow.
Yeah. We are not in tier 2 yet, but I think judging from 2024 financial result, I think we should be in about close to getting into tier 2 based on how we're growing. And we have a 5-year strategy plan that says that by the next 5 years, we should be in, even if we are not in tier 1, I think we should be in top end of tier 2. So these are the numbers, and we are pushing that agenda aggressively.
I like the fact that you're moving between tiers. There's a view in business generally about should we grow bigger or should we be more efficient as two tensions. In your view, which of them is more important? How are you using that in your targets for yourself?
Thank you, Bernard. For me, they are both important. If you grow bigger and you're not efficient, work done is zero. If you're efficient and it's not impacting on your growth, work done is zero. So I think that the two are very important, and we are pursuing the two agendas. So for a bank, not only do we have to be profitable, but the profit has to be significant enough to justify our inclusion in the league of banks. Our size is everything in this industry, because your size will determine the kind of transaction you will do. People will say with you, they think you are strong, and your strength most of the time is in your size. And so for me, the two are very important in the life of any institution, especially banks.
There's a general criticism about Ghanaian banks that the interest rates they charge are too high. They've compared the interest rates with other countries across the continent, and Ghana is always in the top tier. So this is a general industry question. Why is that the case, and what is your bank doing to try and change things?
Okay, so I will lay some foundation before I answer the question directly. I remember several years ago, there was a forum that was held where everybody was talking about interest rate being high. I remember the late Professor Dodonu came from the academia. You had Fifi Equity coming from a government, and then I represented the banks, and everybody was blaming banks. And Professor Dodonu at the time had gone to do an analysis and projecting African countries and rate and things like that, and he brought to Nigeria and others. So I was the last to speak, and I said, first of all, let's appreciate one thing. I said, as banks, we are not Shylocks. I don't think anybody wants to charge high interest rates unnecessarily. But I said, Prof, the job you have done, I would have loved to know what the treasury rates in those markets are. Because if people understand banking, then they'll appreciate the role banks play and why rates are charged. So Bernard, today, if you want to bring your money to a bank, you're enlightened. What reference list are you going to ask for? Is it Treasury bill? So if you come to a bank, and I mean, even up to now, Treasury bill rate is assumed to be almost risk-free. So it means that you're better off investing in Treasury bill than bringing your money to me. So you ask for a margin. So if you come to me and Treasury bill rate is about 17 and you say you want 19, and I also say I'm going to charge a customer 30%, and I will explain why I'm charging 30%. Do you think I'm charging a high interest rate? That's one. Two, do you know what it costs me to do business in Ghana? Very expensive electricity bill. The branches, I'm sure you've seen some of our branches, how nice they are. Do you know what actually went into that? Okay? Do you know the salaries I have to pay my staff to be faithful to the customers that we serve? When you put all this together, you're also looking at the default rate. Most people, when they take money from banks, they don't want to pay back. So all that have to factor into the pricing. When I took over this bank, the NPL ratio was 87%.
The non-performing loan ratio was
87. So it means that in our loan book, 87% of our customers had defaulted. And the bank had to pay the branch. The bank had to absorb it. So these are factors that must be considered. And I've always believed that as banks, you see, when we charge high interest rates, it's not beneficial to us because most of those customers will default. I mean, what are you going to do? What sort of business are you going to do to be able to repay my interest pay the interest of about 30%? Okay? So it means that it has to be high profitable ventures to be able to pay that. So we don't want that. But it's a situation I have found out. I want to be able to charge interest rates of 10%.
So if I hear you right, you're saying the macro environment you operate in and the business environment of Ghana are two of the key causes of the high interest rates.
Very important.
So if T-bill rates come down and cost of doing business comes down, interest rates, well, the good news is that the budget was read a few days ago. Yeah. Minister of Finance said to us that rates are now in the late teens. When he took over, they were in the late 20s. So Treasury bill rates have dropped for all three categories to around 18, 17. So should we hope that if that continues, then interest rates banks offer will also come down?
Yes. You see, let's appreciate the role banks play. We sit in the middle. Somebody has money, doesn't want to know what to do with the money. Somebody wants money, doesn't know where to get the money. We sit in the middle. So I take it from you, I give it to this other person. I charge just a marginal spread doing that. So if you ask for lower rate, naturally I'll pass on your money to this person at a lower rate. If you ask for higher rate, I'll pass on your money at a higher rate. So absolutely you're right that if rates come, I'll watch it most of the time when rates drop. All banks will review the rates on their liabilities, which is deposit. We'll make sure that we'll write customers to say, the rates have come down. We need to bring rates down now. And once that is done, rates come down naturally.
But beyond rates, the other issue with banks is the spread of sectors they support. There's a view that our banks are very interested in trade finance, commerce, but for companies, manufacturing, for example, agriculture, which have a more, how shall I say, the multiplier effect of those sectors is better for employment and for growth. The banks tend to shy away. Can you explain to me why this is so?
It's very simple. No bank wants to lend to a sector that they will not be able to recover. It's that simple. You see, banks are sitting on so much liquidity now. We are better off lending. But where are the sources where we can lend to? What happens is that there are some sectors that traditionally, if you expose yourself there, recovering becomes very difficult. So you look at sectors like agriculture. What sort of customers am I going to find the agriculture sector to be able to lend to them? And I'm telling you, the day we find good customers, most of the time we run to them begging and pleading. And look at the industry, the companies that are in that space that are doing very well, and find out how well the banks are supporting them. So I think that if customers are able to profile themselves well, and present themselves in that state for us to be able to support them, we virtually beg to want to support them. I don't think it's intentional. I don't think it's deliberate. But I'm not sure you'll be happy if you come to me, having given me money as a bank, and they come to me and say, Bernard, so I'm not able to pay your money. I don't think you will be. So we are always trying to protect the depositors' funds. And I don't think there's anybody in this country which will see a very vibrant sector and the bank will say they don't want to support. I don't think so.
So if source of funds come down, rates will come down, and if sectors reduce their risk profiles, I'm sure you know that DSL has been set up trying to risk agriculture, and there are other things that have been done. Because the problem is that if an economy must develop, we have to finance our growth.
Agreed.
And the view is that our banks, even though they are many and very profitable, they are not propelling growth. And that's a criticism I have made of our banks, that you are the only people who make profit. Nobody else does. And your job is intermediation and also to spur growth. And collectively, you have failed to do that.
And I can tell that we are not happy. But again, I told you, I've just given you a scenario where when I took over this bank, the NPL ratio was about 87. Man,
that's crazy.
That's crazy. And all these monies are in the hands of people who don't want to pay back.
Is it not poor risk profiling? I mean, how do you learn 87 is really high?
It is.
It's extremely.
But it's the truth. The truth is that you can profile somebody and you think that person who is almost, everything is okay and all that. The next moment, even character is a major issue. Character is a major issue, including establishment where you think that, this is a well-structured establishment.
Well, average NPLs now, I think when I check the latest BOG Bank of Ghana, between 25 and 30%.
That's still high.
But compared to the 87 you saw, that was just unbelievable.
Yes.
But you're saying that so if I go to comparable countries, what would be the average NPL ratio?
So it depends on the market you're looking at. In developed countries, you and I will agree that it will be less than, it will be a single digit.
But it's because of systems, right? There's credit referencing, address systems are fine. There's a lot of anonymity.
Thank you.
So it's more like a structural problem. It's not even because the people are bad. Because if those people go to UK and borrow, they will pay because the system will find them.
Exactly. So that's why I think that the bank should not be blamed. Not because I'm a banker, but I think that it should be a problem where that say that, look, what can we do to make this, to change things? What can we do to make sure that ultimately, look, things are working well? Because if you continue to blame the bank, you will tell our side of the story. But I think that if, for instance, government decide that, look, let's put a team together, the banks, governments, regulators, customers and all that, and let's ask ourselves, what can we do to improve on what we on lending and business activities? I believe it can be done.
This is the Money Mystery Podcast brought to you by OmniBSIC Bank. My name is Bernard. My guest, Daniel Asiedu, who's the MD of the bank. When we come back, we'll take some end notes, some key lessons for the future, and how he himself is going to develop the next generation of leaders to take over from his very, very important roles. Stay with us.
In 2019, OmniBSIC Bank came into being. For years, you have banked with us, and we have been at your service, prioritizing your financial journey, building the strong foundation to meet your financial needs. And now, we have evolved with a new tagline, not just another bank, with a resolve to be the bank of choice through continuous innovation and exceptional customer experience.
Not just another bank.
Welcome back to the Money Mystery Podcast, and it's powered by OmniBSIC Bank. My name is Bernard. So grateful to have Daniel Asiedu, the MD of OmniBSIC, sitting here with us. Thank you so much for doing this. Let's end on where we started. You're a transformational leader, right? And I know that one of the greatest desires of transformational leaders is that when they are gone, the transformation does not end. What are you doing to ensure that your model and what you do does not leave with you when you leave the system?
Thank you so very much. So the first thing I have been thinking about and I've tried to do consistently is to make sure that the next generation of leaders, especially those around me, are benefiting from my experience. And so I speak to them a lot. I guide them a lot. I direct them a lot. I have people who don't even work with me directly, but who have taken me like a mentor for me to speak into their life, and I meet with them periodically just to share my experiences. I get invited to meetings and for me to speak to people and all that. And then the final thing I'm looking at is that I'm in the process of writing a book. I don't know how many books I will write, but I have never written a book. And I've been told several times that they think that people think that I need to write a book for people to benefit from. So I'm considering that. And I believe that when that is done, people can learn from it.
So the next generation of leaders can read your book and follow your story. Do you have a deliberate mentorship program yet? Or these are more informal mentorship?
More informal mentorship program.
Are you considering doing that? Because for somebody with such a rich variety of experiences in leadership, you may want to think about being more, because one of the problems we have, we don't deliberately grow leaders. You mentioned how your boss at Zenith, you could tell that you were going to take over, right? And I think we need more of that. I don't know if you are going to commit to growing ethical, professional, competent leaders.
So it's something I've not thought about, but I think asking me this question, it reminds me of what Mr. Prince Kofi Annan is doing, women leaders for the next generation and all that. I think it's a good thing. It's something that can be looked at. Especially, I'll be retiring very soon. I'm close to retiring, and so I believe that if I put structures in place, eventually when I retire, I think I can even do better. So why not?
Give me your top 3 leadership reflections or lessons you believe we should never forget in our leadership journey.
Okay. Very important question. The first leadership lesson I want people to learn is the fact that the God factor cannot be ruled out. Everywhere you find yourself, whatever you are doing, I always tell people that if you take out the God factor, I'm not sure to what extent you succeed. Sometimes you may succeed in the short run, but ultimately, I don't think your success will be a complete package. The Bible says something. It says Paul planted, Apollo waters, but the increase came from God. You can do everything you have to do, but if God doesn't bring the increase, I think you're wasting your time. So I think and everywhere I've gone everywhere I've been, the God factor is key. The second leadership lesson that I want people to know is that there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. No, there are no shortcuts. Whatever you do, especially when it comes to paying a price, be willing to pay a price. Mm-hmm. It may be difficult now, but ultimately, it will pay off. People ask me, how am I able to get a result? And I say, lead by example. And my staff will tell you. Most of the time, I am the first. I'm one of the few people who get to the office early. Before 7:30, I'm in the office. Most leaders will not be there. They think that they will ask you to just take the lead out. Okay, but the people are watching. And I always say that, look, if I get to the office before 7:30, you, the staff, tell me the moral justification you have to get to the office at 7:35, when 7:30 is the resumption time. And I have to pay this price to get a result. Okay. The third thing I want, leadership lesson I want people to know is that integrity is everything. In life, integrity is everything. People must learn to guide their reputation and be trustworthy when it comes to dealing with other people. Very, very important. I believe there are many other ones that you can talk about. I believe these 3 for me are very important.
We'll think on these 3. Thank you, Mr. Asiedu, for talking to us.
My pleasure. Thank you so very much for
having me. Speaking to Daniel Asiedu, who's the MD of OmniBSIC Bank, on the Money Mystery podcast, which is powered by the bank he heads, leaving us some very important nuggets. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.